count the votes on election night? And more importantly, what's going to happen in the days and weeks after Election Day? I want you to favorite this video, save it, and come back to it on election night just to remind yourself of how it works when you start to question what's going on. Now, before I explain how vote counting works, there's 3 things I want you to remember. Number 1, every state has its own rules about how to count votes. Number 2, it's very common, especially in tight races, for the leader to change as more votes get counted. Just because one candidate is leading at the beginning of the night doesn't mean that candidate is going to win the seat in the end. And 3, I know we live in an on-demand society and everything we want shows up immediately. But that's not how vote counting works. Counting votes takes time. Hours, days, sometimes weeks. And just because results don't come in immediately doesn't mean there's a problem. It's not a conspiracy. This is how it works. So now to the vote counting. Many states allow early voting, absentee voting, and mail-in voting. In fact, we're seeing record turnout across the country for all of those things. But just because you mailed in your ballot or cast your vote early does not mean that ballot has been processed or counted yet. Lots of states don't even allow election officials to touch those ballots until after the polls close on election night. That means the votes that were cast on election day in person may be counted first, and then election workers will have to open all the absentee and mail-in votes, flatten them out, process them, make sure they're valid, and then feed them through the vote counting machines, and that takes time. Some states allow vote counting to happen all through the night and overnight. Some states don't allow that, and they close the counting late in the evening and pick it back up in the morning. You can check with your own Secretary of State to see what the vote counting rules are in your state. Lastly, some states, like Georgia, require a candidate to get 50% of the vote plus 1 in order to win outright on election night. And if one candidate does not hit that number, there's a runoff on December 6th. Remember, that's what happened in 2020. No candidate got 50 plus 1. There was a runoff election, and that's how Senators Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff were elected, and those seats gave Democrats control of the Senate. And yet again, the race for senator in Georgia could be the deciding factor in who controls the United States Senate. Now, besides Georgia, there are 7 other Senate races that are so close they too could determine which party controls the Senate. If you want to know more about those, I created the midterm cheat sheet. You can read all about those key Senate races and so much more. It's linked in my Stan store.